One of the predictions I was looking at was about homeschooling. Um, when the pandemic first started, it was obvious, okay, people are going to be learning from home. The question is, are they going to get used to this new habit of having their kids at home, and is this something that they'll want to stick? Homeschooling historically has been about accounted for about 3% of the population. Private school accounts for about 7 to 8%, and charter school students account for about 5%, and the rest of the students in the country are all in public school. So, one of the big things I was wondering is whether or not that would actually, increase. Um, I think one of the most important things that has happened out of K through 12 is that parents are fundamentally reconsidering what it means to go to school. And, for all the research that we've done in terms of the Gates Foundation and, Pearson and all of these big players who've looked at the school system for a very long time, and we've measured, what is the most effective way to teach, what is the most effective way to coach teachers so that they can be more effective. One of the fundamental questions that's never really been researched, I was talking to somebody at the Gates Foundation, is whether or not the structure of the school itself is what is best helps learning. And I think this is something that parents are really starting to question right now. This stat here that almost 40% of parents said they disenrolled their child in going into this fall school year from the school they were at prior into some other type of learning experience is really, really, really huge. I mean, this is the largest shift in US K through 12 schooling choices since basically the 18 or maybe even 1700s, probably the early 1800s, when we formalized what school actually was, which is, okay, kids go to a schoolhouse and, they have grades and they move from there to there. The charter school movement wasn't anywhere near this big. Number of students going to private school isn't nearly as big. This is really groundbreaking stuff. And so what we're seeing in EdTech is that there's a ton of startups now answering this kind of shift that we're seeing. On the right here are a couple of just a few, there's many, many more, but just a few of the companies that are part of the quote unquote micro school category that are starting to serve these parents and say, hey, yeah, there is another option other than public school, other than private school, other than charter schools. You can have, like with Prenda, what they do is you can have small pods of 10 students at your home, and, you can teach them from, for half of the day. And if you weren't planning to work anyway, they're kind of positioning this as moms who were stay at home can now have a side job as well. You'll be able to make extra income, but it's not a traditional school in that they're not now, stuck grading papers all afternoon. And so some of the bigger players also, jumped into this pool of this micro school pool. Wonder School launched a offering. They're a daycare education provider, and they started offering a program, Swing Education, which does substitute teachers is their primary service for public schools and private schools. They started offering a new program called Bubbles, and then a bunch of other startups sprung up. Ilk, Prisma, Schoolhouse, they're all micro school focused. Sora does online high school, and Primer and CoLearn Club are maybe a little bit closer to homeschool SaaS, but they are also focused on, they're all oriented towards trying to solve the problem of how do we help parents who want a different schooling experience. So, you guys have all heard the term pandemic pods, learning pods. It became a very, very popular term this summer. And I think where we want to watch this sector, this, particular trend over the next couple of months is there's a couple of things. One, like, how are the states going to all respond to this? There are about right now, I want to say 34 or 38 states that have regulation that is favorable for micro schools, and there's a lot of others that do not. It's also become in many ways a very politicized subject, which is interesting, in that the charter school movement of the 90s was not nearly as politicized. It was had a kind of a lot of bipartisanship support. But this time around, we are seeing that, um, particularly with the strength of the teacher unions, that there's a lot of pushback from blue states on the micro school movement. So New York recently passed laws that make it kind of make it illegal for schools to be micro schools of more than, I think it was 3 or 4 students, to be operating. So really interesting stuff we'll see here over the next couple of months. I mean, a big question is who becomes the DOE head, the Department of Education. I Unless I missed something on CNN, I haven't seen who that person has been, who's been named that role quite yet. But I do think that's a really interesting category to watch.